So I think that's why it's important that we understand the timeline, because we thought we had the Google warrant, we thought it was a valid warrant. So the searching was done on there, primarily because it's easier. The user who's looking at this information, it's so much easier to look at the Google return. It's just user friendly, you can see everything. Looking at that computer is very difficult, and one that I believe none of us possess the skills to do, and that's why we always direct Aaron Sparling to do the searching. So I think what the state's position is, as we're preparing for trial, we're digging into these searches. We're asking Detective Sparling to dig into these searches, and what he's seeing on that February 1st, February 2nd timeline is all the searching for gun shops. That would have, coming across Power Tech Precision Services in those searches, would have done the same thing to us as what it did in our Google searching. Meaning, we're seeing all these searching regarding gun shops. We come across Power Tech Precision Services and we go, what's that? And then we look into that and we see that it's a gun shop, a gunsmithing shop. We would have gotten there either way. It just was sort of, I guess, simpler from a user perspective to look at the Google one. And I don't necessarily think that what your ruling was would necessarily get rid of that. I think the searching for gun shops on the Google warrant, or guns or whatever, that was still permitted, we probably could still get there even with the Google warrant. We're just being cautious and saying, well, let's not worry about that. Let's just focus on the.
Well, I do think I'll have to hear from the witnesses
Sure.
and hear the arguments from both sides before I can rule on whether it will be admissible or not admissible. Was the whole point in calling, is it officer or detective?
Officer Sparling.
Officer Sparling. Is the whole point in calling him this morning related to that, or are there other reasons he's being called too? I say this morning, it's the afternoon, but are there other reasons?
Yes, he has other testimony to provide this afternoon.
Okay. And your various witnesses that you talked about being flown in, have they testified, or are they still?
They have not.
Well, because in order to make a ruling on whether or not the portion of his testimony should come in that's related to this searching of, this broader issue of whether or not ultimately we're going to allow Kermit Dove to testify, I think I'm going to have to hear both from Officer Sparling and I think you said there was a second. Was there a second witness related to that? That was a...
I believe it would just be Officer Sparling that would be required.
Oh, okay. All right. Then let's hear from Officer Sparling by way of a proffer so that I can hear the arguments and rule on this.
Okay, we'll call Officer Sparling.
But let's only call him for this issue, not the other things unrelated to this
Yes,
issue.
no, we'll only address this issue.
All right, and Officer Sparling, we'll have you just step into the witness box, and if you could remain standing while my clerk gives you a note.
Please raise your right hand. Under the penalty of perjury, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Then you may be seated and you may remove your mask. And then because we're being recorded, I'll ask you to please state and spell your first and last name.
Sounds good. First name is Aaron, spelled A-A-R-O-N. Last of Sparling, S-P-A-R-L-I-N-G.
All right. You can be quiet.
Officer Sparling, where are you employed?
The Portland Police Bureau?
And are you a sworn officer there?
I am.
Skipping ahead from your sworn officer days on patrol, what do you do now?
I'm currently assigned to the Digital Forensics Unit, part of the Forensics Evidence Division.
Okay. And I'm going to skip a little bit of your training experience because I know that'll take a little while to explain, but is part of your job to analyze computers related to investigations?
It is.
And specifically, did you analyze 2 computers for the case against Nancy Brophy?
I did.
I'm not going to talk about the one, I'm just going to talk about the computer that was found in the closet. For the most part, is that where the majority of the information was that you were able to find in this case?
That's correct.
And did you work with Detectives Merrill, Posey, and the prosecution in developing a plan for how you would analyze those computers?
We did.
Okay. And you, in fact, wrote a report a while back detailing what your findings were. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I want to first go back to that original report, and then we'll talk about what you did over the past week. In that original report, did you detail some findings around February 1st of 2018?
I believe so, yes.
And how did you get to those? Were you using certain search terms in order to find these artifacts and things on the computer?
We did. We used preset search terms.
Okay. And just in general, what were some of the search terms that were
They're listed in the
applicable?
report, but I believe like gun, murder, Glock.
Okay. And so you provided that report, and then over the past week, you were asked to do some further searching into the computer. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Or I guess maybe you were asked a couple weeks ago, but you provided a report within the past week.
That is correct.
And so I want to direct your attention to that report. I'm looking at a report dated April 17th of 2022, and where you explain how you did a search to try to locate this company called PowerTech Precision Services. Were you directed to do that?
I was.
Okay. And did you locate any artifacts on that computer regarding PowerTech Precision Services?
I did.
And when were those artifacts reported?
In my report, you mean, or on the computer?
On the computer.
I'd have to see the report.
Oh, do you not? I didn't, sorry, I thought you had a copy.
I don't have a copy of
I'll
it.
show you a copy of your report.
Thanks. So the timestamps for those particular artifacts come back to, looks like February 2nd, 2018, roughly 10:13 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
On the first, are you reading UTC?
The first would be I'm reading in Pacific Standard Time, or February 2nd, 2018 at 06:13 a.m. UTC.
Okay. Just so we're clear with the UTC time change, that we're talking about a search for this PowerTech Precision Services on February 1st at about 10:13 p.m.
Correct.
Okay. Now, right before that, and I'll show you, it's marked as State's Exhibit 82, the summary of your first report. Can you take a look at that for me, please?
The first entry, sure. It's looks like chrome artifacts for what looks like to be searches for gun shops in Portland.
What time is that on Pacific Standard Time?
That is going to be also February 1st, 2018 at 12:07 Pacific Standard Time.
Less than a minute before the PowerTech entry.
Correct. If my math is right, but yes, that looks about right.
PowerTech entry being at 10:13 p.m. These gun shops in Portland being at 10:12:07, so 53 seconds prior.
Roughly.
And officer, could you kind of describe too, this summary, this isn't every search that's on that computer, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Around that time, this February 1st, late at night, and around this time of this PowerTech Precision Services, were you seeing kind of those same searches, gun shops in Portland, stuff like that around that time?
Yeah, actually, the PowerTech Precision is, if you will, sandwiched between what looks to be gun shop searches in Portland, both above and below by time,
Okay.
or before and after, however you would
Before
prefer
and
it.
I don't think I have any other questions.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Officer Sparling.
Good afternoon.
My name is Ryan Scott, and I get to do the cross-examination this afternoon. So you've testified before, I assume?
I have.
So you know that if I ask you a question which you have trouble following, we'll agree you'll ask me to clarify?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So I want to first talk about the second search, the one that has occurred within the last 2 weeks, the one from your report dated yesterday.
Correct.
So who told you to conduct that search?
It was done, well, I mean, I guess it was the prosecution team.
Who on the prosecution team?
Well, Overstreet,
Okay, and did he call you or email you?
it was in person.
It was in person? And what exactly did he ask you to do?
Well, exactly, I'm not really sure, like specifically, but generically it was do some follow-up on some search terms, and that was one of them.
Okay. Your report only mentions one search term.
Correct.
Okay. Is that the only search term for which you found anything of value?
Yes.
Okay. So now, do you know when that in-person conversation occurred with Mr. Overstreet?
I don't know exactly. It was probably 2 weeks ago. It had to have been 2 weeks ago because I've been gone the last 2 weeks.
Okay, so it was right before you left then?
That is correct.
Okay. So just to be clear, after March 30th, do you believe?
I'd have to look at a calendar.
Okay. Let's see. So March 30th of this year was a Wednesday.
Okay.
Would looking at the calendar off my phone help you?
Tremendously.
May I approach, Your Honor?
But on the 3rd, it would have been sometime, I believe, this week, the last week of March.
And you don't remember if it was before or after the 30th?
I don't. I'd have to check emails or,
But that's something you would be able to find out?
I believe so.
But you say emails. Were there any emails related to this search?
There was an email related to the meeting,
Okay.
the date and time of the meeting.
Okay. So now, want to be clear about this. You were told specifically to look for things related to PowerTech Precision Services, and the way you found that is using specifically the phrase PowerTech.
That is correct.
Okay. And what you looked at was everything off of these two computers.
No, I searched the one computer. Well, no, I did search. I think I did search all 3 computers.
But was there any other limits on the search?
Can you clarify your question?
Certainly. The hard drives that you searched, were those the full hard drives taken from the computer?
Yeah, so just so that we're clear, I'm not actually searching the hard drives. I'm searching an index of the hard drives in a case file.
Okay. But those,
It's the hard drives have been processed in the forensic software, and so I'm actually doing an index search within the software.
so were there any, before that index was created, were there any limitations on that, or would it be identical to what was in the hard drive?
It would, when you say limitations and identical, what do you mean?
Well, let me put it this way.
Sure.
Is there, in the index, was there anything that wouldn't have, well, was there anything that would have been on the hard drive that wasn't in the index?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, so the index would reflect the complete and total content on the hard drive.
That is correct.
Okay. So when you did the search for PowerTech, you were not in any way following any of the search commands from the search warrant for that computer.
I'm not sure I follow.
Well, the original search warrant for that computer had a number of search commands.
Okay,
You're not aware of that?
I'm not.
Okay. So in the scope of your search, any limitations from the search warrant played no role in your search that you documented yesterday.
Is that a question or a statement?
Yes, is that correct?
Can you rephrase the question?
Certainly. When you conducted your search of the index from the hard drive, you weren't in any way limited by the scope of the search commands in the search warrant.
Correct.
So now, going back to the 2018 search, in that case, you did find a reference to PowerTech.
I'm sorry,
You found a reference to PowerTech?
in 2018,
Yes,
it would have been there. I did not make note of it, if that's your
you
asking.
did not make note of it. So do you know or had any discussions, had anyone made note of it?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Officer Sparling, I want to make sure we understand why, when we're talking about these search terms that you say precision power tech is sort of sandwiched in between them, and how we kind of got there, how we could get there. When you're saying you're looking at these searches for which you are using search terms like guns or stuff like that, when you're seeing these searches for gun shops, are you then seeing the results of those searches or where the user then goes in relation to that search?
So in relationship to the gun shops, so those are all bookmarked and they're basically stacked chronologically, and in between them is the search for PowerTech Precision.
Right.
Is that what you're asking?
Well, I want to make sure we understand how, by looking for the searches for gun shops in Portland, that you can see, and correct me if it's wrong, that you can see that the user who's doing these searches then sees that this is an option, this PowerTech Precision Services, in relation to that search term that they use, and that they're visiting that site.
So in the output of the web history, yes, it sits between the two groups of searches for Portland gun shops.
Right. And then you can actually see that while doing these searches, that user then goes and actually visits that site.
I can see that the user had visited that site, yes.
Okay. In the context of these searches that is happening sort of not simultaneously, but very close in time, these searches for gun shops in Portland.
Yes, by looking at the web history artifacts,
Right.
you will see chronologically the searches for gun shops in Portland.
Yes,
Then you will see the search that we're talking about, and then you'll continue to see chronologically gun shop Portland.
I see. Okay. I think
And that is in the output of
okay. And
artifacts
I think that explains what my question was.
in both tools.
In both tools, meaning you ran this in two different,
That is correct.
is that Axiom
And autopsy forensics.
autopsy? Okay, I think you've testified to that before, so. And you ran that in both tools, and these have been verified that these artifacts are on the computer.
Correct.
I think that was all the clarifying questions I had, Your Honor.
All right, why don't we have you step down, because we're gonna hear some argument. All right, go ahead, Mr. Overstreet.
I think I have to go first because it's my offer
Okay.
of proof, unless somebody disagrees with that.
No, it's your burden, so go
Okay.
ahead.
So, Your Honor, I mean, this stuff is relatively confusing, but I think the final point that I was trying to get at there with Officer Sparling at the end is that although he was directed, that's because we know where to look. I understand that. However, we're looking not on the Google search warrant. I think that's very important, that we're looking on the computer. And what we're saying is, well, we're looking at this time frame. We're looking at a specific time frame because we knew of the searches regarding gun shops and having Officer Sparling look at that. And what he's testifying to is while you're looking in that, you can see this PowerTech Precision Services, and that Ms. Brophy, while she's searching for gun shops in Portland, actually then visited that. So I think the natural inference is, well, maybe that this is a gun shop that we are able to look at, that we should be able to view, and with independent research as to what that is. I think that's different from what defense is trying to argue here than that, well, we looked at this search warrant return from Google, we saw this, we lost the Google search warrant, which we didn't necessarily lose everything on there, I still would point that out, but now we know that we need to go look for it somewhere else because we've already heard of it. That shouldn't really matter. I mean, in some ways this is an inevitable discovery argument, but in some ways it's sort of that argument is moot because we're not using Google. We are looking at a computer that we are lawfully able to view, that we can look at these search terms, we can look deeper into that as we prepare for trial. So just because we didn't do it sooner, I don't think that matters. I explained why we didn't look in the computer sooner because of the Google return. So I don't think that that matters. I don't think that there's a taint that we then took from the Google return that says, well, we would have never found this on the computer if it wasn't for that. I just don't think that's true. I mean, as we prepare for trial, we're not only looking into things that are around February 1st, we're looking at these other items that Officer Sparling found on the computer as well, dating back to 2017. And we're looking at the context for in which she's doing this searching as we got closer to trial and we're getting ready for the trial. So, I mean, I guess I don't need to reiterate anything unless you have any questions for me. I'll leave it at that.
No, but I will ask this. Well, I guess I have one question. To what extent, in your mind, does it matter that Officer Sparling testified that when he went back to search this computer, he did not do so pursuant to the commands in the original warrant that allowed for the search of that computer?
Well, I guess he's not aware of the commands that he was permitted to use. And I think we talked about a lot about that in the motions, that really he was permitted to look in this computer, but we're going to be limited to any results from commands that were authorized by the warrant. So
Sure, you can look anywhere. I mean, the commands have to do with what you're looking for, though, right?
and I guess what I'm sort of settling on here, Your Honor, is that as we got closer to trial and we're preparing with Officer Sparling, and I'm focusing on that February 1st timeframe, and I'm saying, okay, she's doing a lot of searching for gun shops. Anything in there, are there any results that we should be looking at? Is there anything that we should be focusing on that we could have come across this under the same, without having anything to do with the Google warrant? As we're doing this, we can come across this search and see that she actually visited while we're doing searches for things like guns, gun shops, gun parts, murder, whatever. That would have allowed us to view this because of the order of events that took place, meaning this idea that this is sandwiched in between all of these searches for the same thing.
All right. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Your Honor. Touching on the last point that Your Honor raised, this is non-responsive evidence. It is evidence that was obtained via a search command that was not consistent with the search warrant or the search warrant affidavit. This is exactly what all these cases have been about. You can't simply rummage through a computer willy-nilly. In theory, the court or the law enforcement is limited to the confines of the warrant. That's what every case since Manzor has said, time after time after time. We obviously had a disagreement as to whether or not the scope of the warrant was sufficiently narrowed and consistent both with probable cause and without undue rummaging. We lost that, but the important thing is that we know what the search commands that are allowed. We know where they can look. And in this case, by the state's own testimony, they didn't follow the warrant at all. They just looked specifically for power tech. Now, why did they look for power tech? Well, we know why they looked for power tech. Because the second Google warrant, which they got rather late in the day, almost a year, I think, since Your Honor granted the order suppressing most of that content, the state gets a second warrant, suddenly discovers Power Tech and Kermit Dove, talks to him. But when that second warrant is suppressed, and that's no longer a viable, and most of it was suppressed. There was some that wasn't. State doesn't have a good faith argument that the stuff that wasn't would have led to Kermit Dove. It just isn't there. If they did, they would have made it. But they have now lost Kermit Dove. They've now lost Power Tech Precision Services. So what happens? Mr. Overstreet calls his forensic analyst and says, look up Power Tech. Obviously, indisputably, that was a result of the court's order or the court's likely order. Ultimately, his testimony is he doesn't remember when the meeting was with Mr. Overstreet, but he did give a week. The order was on Wednesday. It was after, ultimately, the arguments and testimony the week before. Obviously, indisputably, the reason he was told to search for Power Tech is because of what they had learned from the Google warrant. Under De Jong, the state fails the attenuation analysis, and it has to be suppressed. And I won't go into it much because we talked about it a lot last time, and the court cited it, of course, in your own order from March of this year.
I did.
De Jong says that even, ultimately, you look at not just whether evidence was relied upon, unlawfully obtained evidence in a warrant, but whether or not things were done, a search was even conducted based on illegal activity by law enforcement. Here we have that. We have an illegal search warrant. We have one that doesn't comply. Their second one, they had a chance to get it right. They didn't. Still failed to comply. They still failed to meet the requirements under De Jong to show independent source. And then, having lost that, they direct their forensic analyst to look specifically for the information that had been suppressed. That fails the attenuation analysis. Now, the state makes the argument, well, we might have found it anyway because we were looking at her activity on that day and her searches for gun shops. It doesn't sound like Power Tech necessarily showed up as a gun shop, but it was sandwiched, as said, between the other searches for gun shops. And maybe they would have, but maybe doesn't satisfy inevitable discovery. And furthermore, we have strong reason to think they wouldn't have, because they hadn't after 3 years, 3.5 years, they've supposedly had this information, and it never, they never thought to contact or call Power Tech until what they had learned in the Google warrant, as a result of the Google warrant. Now, I want to be clear furthermore, even aside from all that, the state also fails a fundamental requirement of inevitable discovery, which is that they forget what the evidence is. The evidence is not merely the existence of Power Tech. It's frankly, the fact that Power Tech was listed in her computer or that she looked at the website is only part of the evidence at issue. The other part is the conversation with Kermit Dove. And there's no evidence, none, that the state has put forward that but for, the Google search, they ever would have had that conversation with Kermit Dove. And that's something that they would need to put on inevitable discovery. What they're asking this court to assume is that, we just asked him to search for Power Tech. He did. Even though we got that information from the Google warrant, we still sort of had it anyway. So we would have called Kermit Dove probably, maybe 3.5 years later. We would have gotten around to it eventually, and we would have learned the same information. But under inevitable discovery, for them to make that argument, they actually have to draw the lines. They have to show they would have called Kermit Dove, but for this illegal Google search, and they haven't even done that. So for all these reasons, we would ask that the court find that Kermit Dove is still both directly and indirectly evidence that resulted from the illegal, or from the Google search, both Google searches that this court suppressed, and the state hasn't met its burden either to show attenuation or inevitable discovery. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Overstreet.
And I think I need to clarify something, Your Honor, because I'm not sure I did this very clearly, was the computer search warrant doesn't actually have specific search terms that are permitted. It talks about probable cause regarding gun purchases, murder, things like that. So I think kind of no matter how we look at this, the fact that we're not limited by specific search terms in the search warrant, we get to look for things around those items too.
Sure.
And so perhaps we would have found even a broader array of searches that Ms. Brophy did around that time as we dug further into this computer. And so I think for defense to say that, well, we only could have gotten there by this Google warrant is just not really accurate. Just because we didn't do it in the order that they would have liked is not really up for debate. I mean, that doesn't matter in which order we did it. It only matters that it did exist. We did have it for 3.5 years. We could have looked at any time, and I believe we would have been able to find that. And I believe we would have. I think as we got ready for this trial, we were being very diligent in turning over every stone on the different witnesses, the forensic evidence that we have. I believe that we would have found this. And because it's in that searching of gun shops that you see a gun shop. And so I think that we would have come across it.
All right. I do think it's an interesting issue. I will tell the sides, but at the end of the day, I'll give my ruling first. I am going to continue to suppress the interview with Kermit Dove. What could have happened or what might have happened is not at issue. I think we have a fairly clear record that Kermit Dove was learned about after the second Google warrant, and he was interviewed after that warrant, but before Aaron Sparling had been directed to do a more thorough or another search of the computer. He indicated he was specifically told to look for power tech when he looked on the computer, but at that point in time, Kermit Dove had already been interviewed. So I don't see how there is an attenuation between what I ultimately ruled to be unlawful, the second Google warrant, and the evidence that resulted from it, which was the existence of Kermit Dove and the information that he provides. So I am going to continue to suppress his testimony. With that, is there anything else we need to take up before we get the jury back?
Your Honor, just briefly, I believe that the state said that they are planning to further call Mr. Sparling today.
They did.
The court will see that he is on the witness list for tomorrow. We did not understand that he was going to be called this afternoon. We don't object to him being taken on direct this afternoon, but we do object to him being completed this afternoon.
Well, you know, the purpose of witness lists for both sides is to try to give the other side an idea of who's going to be called. I don't know there's any strict requirement that they have to be called in the precise order they're listed. But what I would ask the state, given the time constraints of some of the people who have flown in from out of town, is it still the state's intention to call Officer Sparling next?
It is also. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say next?
Yes.
Oh, no, not next.
Okay.
In fact, we plan on calling one of our out-of-state witnesses.
Okay.
Next. And Your Honor, we did provide a schedule, and I believe Mr. Officer Sparling's name is on it for today.
No, they're saying he was on for tomorrow, not for today.
He's on both.
Yeah, and just to be
Okay.
super clear for the record, Your Honor, we've been providing a week-by-week schedule, which is unusual, but the request of the defense to try and give him a heads up as to each day, and he's very clearly listed, has been on our schedule for Monday afternoon the entire time.
All right. Well, I'm not gonna.
Your Honor, I've seen that list, and it specifically says that he was being called for the 104 hearing, and then he was going to be called the next day.
But there's no rule, is there, that
No.
one side has to call their witnesses in precisely the order they indicate? I think it's done as a courtesy both to each other and to the court. But I'm not going to prevent the state from calling a witness if they're here and ready to testify, and defense has known about the witness for several years. Or let's get the jury back in and call the next witness.
And, Your Honor, at this point, my role for today is done, so
Okay.
I'll be stepping away. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Judge, I will go ahead and go off record and I will get the jury. And I will mute for WebEx as well.
Thank the jurors for their patience. It looks like, I'm sorry that we rushed you to finish lunch because you're coming in later than we expected. It's just one of those unpredictable things that occurred. But we are on track for the day. So, Mr. Overstreet, your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor, the state will call Kyle Martin.
Okay. All right, Mr. Martin, we'll have you come up to the witness box here and you can just step into it, but stay standing for a moment and my clerk will give you a note.
I'll have you raise your right hand, please. Under the penalty of perjury, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, then you may be seated. And then because, you can go ahead and take off your mask.
Thank you.
And then because we're being recorded, I'll just ask you to please state and spell your first and last name.
Ready? Kyle Martin, Kylemartin.
All right, and Mr. Martin, there is a pitcher of water there if you wish,
Thank you.
but whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you, Judge. Mr. Martin, where are you currently employed?
Where am I currently employed?
Yes.
California.
And what line of work do you do now?
We do party supplies. It's like wedding party stuff.
Okay. And is that a business that you own?
Yes.
And did you previously, or were you previously associated with a website called ghostguns.com?
Yes.
Is that a company that you owned?
Yes.
Did you start that company?
Yes. Me and a partner.
You and a partner started
Yes.
that company. And are you currently associated with the website ghostguns.com?
No.
And what year did you start that company?
2016, 2017, somewhere in there.
And when did you stop being associated with that company?
April 1st, 2019.
I'm gonna, if we could put up 65. I'm gonna show you what's marked as States Exhibit 65. It'll show up on your screen there here in just a moment. Now, was this a ghostguns.com? Was this also a store, a physical location, or was it solely on the website?
It started out solely on the website, and then it became a physical location later on.
And did was that still while you were associated with it?
Correct.
Okay. And so the website, we're looking at this. Do you recognize this image?
Yes.
Okay. Is that a true and accurate depiction of what your website, ghostguns.com, looked like in 2018?
Yes.
Does it look a little different now
Yes.
since you haven't been associated with it?
Yes.
Now we can our eyes can kind of look around on this screenshot. But I want to ask you a couple questions about it. Up at the top there, it says Ghost Guns. I take it that's just the brand name?
Yes.
Okay. And then it says under that, unserialized, unregistered. Could you please describe what that is sort of advertising?
That there's the Gun Control Act, I don't remember what year, but there's a law that if you build it yourself at home, then you don't have to serialize it or register it.
Okay. So is the purpose of this company that you can purchase the parts necessary to build the gun?
Yes.
You don't actually sell fully built firearms on this website?
Correct, we do not.
Okay.
Did not.
Did not, yes, thank you. So when you say unserialized, is it true that some of the parts on the kits that you provide have something that resembles a serial number?
Yes.
And is that a serial number that is tracked in the United States?
No.
And when you say unregistered, is that just not registered with the state?
Correct.
Okay. So back in 2018, who could go on this website and purchase these build kits?
Anybody with a credit card?
There's not some special access to the website
No.
or anything? You can just go on this website, pick what you want, and check out?
Yes.
Is there any age verification or anything that went into that, or is it just?
No, we had, I think, a company policy for it, but if you had the credit card, then
So all you really need is a credit card and an ability to work around the website?
yes.
And then, since this was online, would you ship it to anywhere, or did that have to match up with something?
The billing and shipping would match up. was another company policy that we required.
Company policy that you would only ship it to the billing address?
Yes.
Okay, so if I got on there, I put in my information, I give you my credit card, you're only gonna ship it as long as, to my home, as long as that credit card is matching up with my shipping address.
Yes.
And besides a receipt or an invoice of some sort that may or may not have somebody's personal information on it, was ghostguns.com also gathering other personal information to be used later?
Emails.
Email address?
An email address, correct.
Now I want you to describe the kit itself a little bit more. What is a ghost gun build kit?
You'd get a case, a magazine, what we'd call the lower parts kit, which is the parts that you need to finish the lower or the frame, an 80% frame, and then the slide, the completed slide.
Is that a complete slide and barrel?
Yes.
And does that also have the spring and the pin?
Yes. The spring and the recoil spring.
And I'm going to show you what's marked as States Exhibit 25. Actually, I'm going to put it over here. Okay, if I had the witness come over here so we can take a closer look at these parts. Sure. Maybe come over and take a look. First of all, do you recognize this kit?
Yes.
Maybe I could have you stand like over here. We'll kind of look at these. Let me know if you're having a hard time seeing anything. Take a look. Is this one of the kits that you would have sold off of your website?
Yes.
Specifically, it looks like there's maybe a sticker or something in there from Ghost Guns. Can you kind of describe what it is when you're talking about building a lower frame? Can you kind of show us what you're pointing to and what you're talking about when you're talking about the parts that are available to you?
Like what you would do?
Yeah, just kind of not step-by-step directions necessarily, but just kind of showing us what it takes in order to put this lower frame together.
You just drill 3 holes in each side of the frame, and then there's 4 tabs up at the top that you have to remove, and then a tab in the center here.
Okay. That's what it takes to prepare the lower frame to be built?
Yes.
Besides, it sounds like you said drill some holes. Besides drilling some holes, is there really any other special equipment that's required?
Whatever you're going to use to remove the tabs.
Could that be done with, say, a file?
Yes.
Now, in this kit, you mentioned it has all the parts necessary to make that lower frame.
Yes.
Are these the individual parts that go inside of this frame?
Yes.
Specifically, can you kind of describe what's in this bag here?
You have the trigger spring, the connector, the trigger housing, what's that called? Magazine release, spring, the trigger pins, the locking block pin, the trigger housing pin, the slide lock, and then slide lock spring, and the slide stop.
Okay. And that's one of, it's like 4 bags with parts or 3 bags with parts?
Correct.
That's what you just described?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask the court for permission to publish this to the jury to view the contents of this bag. All right.
Do you want to pass that on too?
while they're taking a look at that, you described that there's also a magazine in this kit. That's a full, ready-to-use magazine,
We only kept 10 rounds, but yes,
a 10-round magazine.
10-round
But you don't need to do anything to this to prepare it to be used.
no.
And then I want to talk about the slide and barrel a little bit while they're looking at that. Is this the complete slide and barrel that you already described?
Yes,
So we have the slide here, the barrel's inside, and then we have the
recoil spring.
recoil spring here?
Yes.
Okay. Now for this piece itself, is there anything you need to do to that as part of this kit to have that gun function? Is there anything that you need to do to the slide and barrel?
No,
So this slide and barrel is ready to be used.
correct,
So if you had a Glock, this is a Glock 19, correct?
correct.
If you had a Glock 19 lower frame completed, you could just slide this on there and it would be ready for use?
Correct. As long as it matches the generation.
Sure.
But-
Say Glock 19 Generation 3,
Yes.
this would be able to slide on there and this would be ready for use.
Yes.
And these are interchangeable,
Yes.
meaning it could go on any Glock 19 Generation 3 frame.
Yes.
I think you could probably go ahead and take a seat. Having that pass around.
I'll keep an eye on it.
Okay, thanks. So, we talked about, you talked about what it takes to build this lower frame. I mean, just in general, what kind of level of expertise or gun knowledge do you think it requires to put something like that together?
It would take time if you have less knowledge, I guess.
Sure. If you weren't, let's say you've never owned a gun before, would that be a difficult kit to put together?
The first time I did it, I think it was an hour and a half.
Okay.
For me to do it.
And did you have prior gun knowledge?
Yes.
Now why don't we put up 78? I'm gonna show you what's marked as States Exhibit 78. First of all, on that first page, if we can go back there, thank you. Is this a page, the handwriting that's on that page, is that your handwriting?
Yes.
Okay. And was that provided as part of providing to detectives a invoice and a receipt?
Yes.
Okay, so if we can go to the second page there. Can you describe what this is, please?
One of our invoices.
And what is the date of that invoice?
December 24th, 2017.
And what was the invoice for?
A complete black Glock 19 build kit. What you saw.
Glock 19, that Glock 19 build kit?
I don't know if it's that exact one, but yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. And then you talked a little bit about delivery and billing addresses already. I think we can see the name Nancy Brophy in both those columns, and they appear to match. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you were saying that was a policy at the time of Ghost Guns that those would need to match in order to deliver there.
Yes.
Okay. And then can we go to the third page? And then what is this that we're looking at? I know it's kind of small.
It's a transaction receipt from our processing, the company we use to process credit cards.
Okay. And what was the cost of this particular build kit?
$676.99.
Now, is that higher or lower than if you were just to go to, say, a gun store and purchase a complete Glock 19?
Generally higher.
The gun kits cost more?
Usually it costs more to build, yes.
Is there a particular reason for that, or?
Parts. It would cost more for the parts because you got to get them individually.
And I'm guessing maybe volume to a gun store maybe sells more, and so
Yeah.
charge less. Okay.
It's up there.
Oh, we already got. Okay. Great, thanks. Okay, and before I forget, I'm going to move to admit States Exhibits 65. Thank you. 70, 78. Okay, and States Exhibit 78, and then States Exhibit 25.
No objection.
All right, 65, 25, and 78 are admitted.
Thank you. Also, as part of the shipping of these kits, do you require, was it a requirement of Ghost Guns at the time that they, that these items be signed for?
It became a policy, yeah, yes.
But once you've let it go out the door with USPS, you don't really have any control over that anymore, is that correct? Okay. And did you provide also the shipping information, including tracking numbers to investigators as well?
I would
Or would it be on the invoice?
It wouldn't be on
back to
the invoice, I don't believe.
Okay, so you don't recall if you provided any shipping or tracking information?
I don't recall, yeah, I don't remember.
Okay, Mr. Martin, I don't think I have any other questions. I'm just gonna.
We might, no, go ahead, take it away.
All right, whenever Mr. Overstreet sits back down and defense is ready.
Has the part that, or the bag that was published been returned?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Excuse me. Good afternoon, Mr. Martin. My name's Lisa Maxfield, and I represent Nancy Brophy along with Ms. Weinmiller. Back in November of 2017, you were the owner of GhostGuns.com.
Yes,
Okay, and it was GhostGuns.com a company name, an assumed name, or
it
just
was
the name of the website?
it was a doing business as name.
Okay, and what was the name of the company?
It was either Hell and High Water Tactical as a partnership, or it was a Ghost America LLC.
Okay. On November 27th, you were still the president of GhostGuns.com. November 27th of 2017.
2017, yes.
Okay. And as the president, you were the primary company media contact, is that right?
Yes.
You gave interviews during that period in November of 2017.
I don't remember.
Do you recall being contacted by the New York Times sometime before November 27th of 2017?
I don't recall, no.
Show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 255. And counsel, we may have given this another number prior to openings.
Is it the one you emailed this afternoon?
I just gave it a new number.
Sure.
Let me show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 255. And I want you to kind of thumb through that and see if that refreshes your recollection.
Okay. Let me see. It doesn't refresh it, but it does sound like something like,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, let me just ask you, is it true that prior to November 27th of 2017, you sent an emailed statement to the reporter for the New York Times?
I don't remember. Sorry.
Well, let me ask you this. If they quote you and your email, let me ask if you recall saying this. Kyle Martin, president of Ghost Guns, said in an email on Sunday that his company follows all state and federal laws. Would that be true back in November of 2017, that you followed all the laws?
Yes.
And quote, "We deal with a lot of customers that are hobbyists." Would that be true back in November of 2017?
Yes.
The customers we have come into contact usually already own firearms, have mechanical skills to complete the manufacturing process, and come from all walks of life, including many military and law enforcement. Is that true?
It's true. Yes.
And is that consistent with statements that you were making to the media back in November of 2017 about your company, what it did, and who its customers were?
Yeah, the broad base of the customers was military and law enforcement, yes.
If you'll turn to the second page of that article, third paragraph. It has some hyperlinks to a couple of websites. Do you see those?
Yes.
And is one of those hyperlinks to your website?
At the time, yes.
Pardon me?
At the time, yes.
So if, assuming that this was in the hyperlink form, if a reader clicked onto ghostguns.com, they would end up at your website.
Yes.
Was there a period in November of 2017 when the issue of homemade guns became a national conversation?
Yes, I would say it got more.
In fact, a couple of weeks before this New York Times article, there had been a mass shooting in California, and it was alleged that a homemade gun had been used. Do you recall that?
I do not know.
Do you recall, after this New York Times article was printed, that the traffic to ghostguns.com had a significant increase in traffic?
We had that a couple times, yes.
The other thing that you said in this article is that we only ship to shipping addresses that match the billing address, along with a signed receipt of delivery. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's what you've testified to today.
Yes.
And when you get this signed receipt of delivery, does proof that someone's actually signed for it come back to you?
It's the USPS sign, so if we went onto the website and requested it, then they would send it to us, yes.
Okay. And you were asked to provide all of the records regarding Ms. Brophy's transaction with you?
I don't know.
The,
Whatever was sent
was it a warrant or a subpoena that was served on you? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I don't think I saw any warrants. I saw a few subpoenas though.
And did you provide the prosecution or the police with every record that was generated as a part of Ms. Brophy's purchase?
To the best of my knowledge, yeah.
Did you provide them with the signed receipt of delivery?
I don't recall.
Is it true, and I don't know whether it's true now, but was it true back in November of 2017 and December of 2017 that these gun build kits were legal so long as they were intended for personal use?
I don't know if use matters, but they were legal, yes.
Counsel asked you about serial numbers, and the gun kit that you sold Ms. Brophy did have serial numbers on the slide.
On the slide and barrel, yes.
And these were serial numbers that were generated by Glock, the manufacturer.
Yes.
So what was sold inside that gun kit was a Glock slide and barrel.
Part of it, yes.
Okay. It wasn't like a counterfeit. It was
Oh, correct, yes.
the real deal.
Yes.
And at the time, did Glock manufacturers, were they willing to sell their slide and barrels separately?
Not separately, no.
So how did
Or
you?
I don't know if they were willing to, but they did not sell them separately
Okay.
at the time. Yeah.
How was it that you were able to obtain serialized slides and barrels that were actually manufactured by Glock to put in these kits?
So they're serialized because they got serialized in Austria where they're manufactured.
But how were
Once-
you able to get them if Glock wouldn't sell them separately from the gun?
Once they hit the US, then they get sold to FFLs, which are like gun stores. And then the gun store would then break it down and sell them individually. And that's why it tends to be more expensive to build a gun rather than just buy one.
In California in 2017, in fact, local police stations throughout California were selling spare Glock parts from guns that had been seized. Are you aware of that?
I had heard of police trade-ins, okay, I had heard about it.
Did you use any police auctions or police sales to fill these kits?
No. Or not that I know of, no.
And when you sold your company, did you sell it to your vice president?
I didn't sell it, no.
You didn't sell it?
We had a split, I guess.
Huh? Well, tell me how it came to be that you were no longer the owner or president of ghostguns.com.
I wanted to go a different direction, and he didn't. And then it wasn't really amicable. So he got the website and everything else, and then I just was left with the debt.
So you got the debt and he got the profit?
Yes. And we went to court to try to rectify that, but I ran out of money, so I couldn't.
All right. Is there anything else that we want? I don't think I have anything further. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, redirect.
Yes, thank you, Judge. You talked for a second with Ms. Maxfield about you have the ability to go to the U.S. Postal Service and request a copy of the signature receipt. Did you do that every single time you guys sold a ghost gun build kit?
No.
Did you request it in regards to Ms. Brophy's purchase of the build kit?
I don't remember. We would request it when somebody would file a chargeback. And then that would be part of our case to try to get the money back, that it was a delivered product. That was the main reason that we did that.
Did Ms. Brophy do that in this instance?
Do what?
Try to get her money back?
Oh, I don't know.
Would you have had some sort of record of that probably?
You would, I think, yes, you would see it on a record, yes, through the processor.
And if you would have had that attempt to get a refund, you would have requested, or somebody would have requested probably from USPS
Yes.
this receipt.
Yes.
Okay. So the fact that you didn't send to the detectives a receipt, what does that mean anything to you?
That it doesn't mean anything to me now.
Okay.
I don't,
Would that sort of indicate that this maybe was just a routine transaction and nothing came of
yeah,
it?
I don't.
Okay. What, on that topic, were returns allowed?
No, not when it included an 80% frame, because it's as soon as somebody changed it at all, then we considered it a firearm, and it wasn't. We're not taking it back.
Okay. Even if they didn't touch it or do anything with it, you still would?
I don't remember.
Okay. And then I just want to be clear about the serial numbers. Although the serial number is actually stamped on it in Austria.
Yes.
Okay. So outside of that process, is that serial number being reported anywhere? Meaning, when it comes into the U.S., is anybody notifying the government that this serial numbered slide and barrel has now entered U.S. territory?
No.
I don't believe I have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Witness be excused.
Yes, for the state.
Or defense?
We don't have him under subpoena, so we're fine.
Okay, all right. You can go ahead and step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, and who's the state's next witness?
It is Officer Aaron Sparling.
Okay. All right, Officer Sparling, we'll have you just step into the witness box and stay standing for a moment.
I'll have you raise your right hand. Under the penalty of perjury, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Then you may be seated and you may remove your mask. And then because we're being recorded, if you could please state and spell your first and last name.
Sure. My first name is Aaron. That's Aaron. Last name is Sparling. Sparling.
All right, when you're ready.
Officer Sparling, where are you employed?
The Portland Police Bureau?
And are you a sworn officer with the Portland Police Bureau?
I am.
And how long have you been in law enforcement?
17 years.
And are you currently serving in a patrol officer detail?
I am not.
Did you at some point in your
I
career?
did.
And when did you transition from that to what you currently do?
To roughly 2010.
And what is your current position within the Portland Police Bureau?
I'm currently assigned to the Digital Forensics Unit, which is part of the Forensic Evidence Division.
And what is the Forensic Evidence Division?
It's the division that's in charge of handling forensic evidence for the investigative branch for all of Portland Police Bureau. It's made up mostly of criminalists.
And again, what's your title?
I'm an officer.
Okay, but within the Forensic Evidence Division, do you have another designation?
I don't. Not like a criminalist. I'm still classified as an officer.
Okay. And you said you've been doing that since about 2010?
Well, I transitioned from patrol in 2010. Started doing digital forensics 8 to 10 years ago. Started training 10 years ago. Transitioned more full-time about 8 years ago.
And that was my next question. Is that what you do full-time now? Do you only focus on digital forensics?
For the police bureau?
Yes.
That's correct. I split my time between that and CERT.
Okay, and could you just briefly describe what CERT is?
It's Portland Police Bureau's version of the SWAT team.
And as some of your duties within the analyzing digital forensics, could you kind of just briefly describe what that is?
For me, I focus on computers. And so it is the receiving of the devices, imaging the hard drive, and then processing the contents of the hard drive, and then conducting the analysis.
And are you doing this on your own investigations, or is this something that another detective brings to you and asks for your assistance?
We do not work our own investigations. We support the investigative units and officers, detectives of the police bureau and other agencies.
Okay. So if a detective has a computer that they've gathered as part of their investigation, they can bring that computer to you and request your assistance.
Correct.
Now, what kind of training goes into ultimately ending up in a position like that?
Well, there's various levels of training. On the computer side, for us, we do the IASIS CFCE, the Certified Forensic Examiner process. And we also have what's called the Global Information Assurance Council process, which is the GIAC for the Certified Forensic Examiner and Certified Forensic Analyst.
And is there any, outside of specific training, is there any education requirements for you to go into that particular field?
There's not.
Now, could you kind of describe your specific training when it comes to computer forensics and what kind of certifications that you have to get?
Sure. So I personally have the CFCE that I just mentioned from IASIS. I also have the GCFE from GIAC, which I just mentioned, the GFCA from GIAC as well. And then I also have 2 other GIAC certifications, one in computer security and the other in reverse engineering malware.
And they say that as technology advances that you have to continually be getting refreshed training?
100%.
Okay. About how often are you in training?
Probably on average once every 6 weeks, I'm doing some sort of continuing education. If not, I mean, really, honestly, quite frankly, it's daily. I mean, you're constantly researching things and looking things up. It's a daily thing. But in terms of structured training, every probably 6 to 8 weeks, I'm either doing some sort of online course or in-person training now that the COVID restrictions have reduced.
And besides yourself receiving training, do you also train others in your field?
I do.
In what capacity?
I've developed a couple courses for IASIS, which I taught at their annual event, which is held in Orlando, which was doing memory forensic analysis that targeted user investigations. And then I just returned from doing 2 weeks of a NITRO course, Network Intrusion Responder course, at the National Computer Forensic Institute, which is operated and hosted by the United States Secret Service.
So I'm going to have probably some more questions about training and experience as we go through this.
Sure.
But I want to help have you explain to the jury about what actually goes into a computer analysis, meaning to start off, are you actually physically opening up, and I'm sort of saying opening up because I'm referring to a laptop, opening up a laptop and looking at the computer? How do you get into a computer when you're doing your analysis?
The classic answer is it depends, but generically speaking, we usually will take a look. Well, first thing we do is we'll take a look at the computer, check the condition, make some notes of the condition of the computer. 90% of the time, they're in a powered off state. Either with the laptop, either the battery has died and so there's no power to it, or with the desktop, they've clearly removed the power from the power wall, so it's no longer operating. In that case, we inspect the computer, and in most cases, we can remove the physical hard drive from the computer itself. Or nowadays, there's multiple hard drives.
Okay. So you can actually remove the hard drive. Now then, do you do anything to preserve that in case something were to go wrong down the road?
We do. We attach the hard drive to what's known as a physical write blocker. What that does is it kind of works as a gateway between the physical hard drive and the forensic analysis machine to protect the integrity of the drive, to make sure that no data is written to the drive during the imaging process.
Okay, so the specific process that you use doesn't allow any alterations to be made to the original drive?
Correct.
And then
When you're using a physical write blocker, there are times where we have to do live analysis,
I understand.
which in that case it would make some small alterations.
Okay. Do you do what's called imaging, where you copy a hard drive or something like that and then work off of the copy instead of the original?
That is correct.
Could you explain how that's done?
In basic terms, essentially the removal of the hard drive is attached to the physical write blocker. There's a separate piece of software that knows how to interpret the drive. It essentially copies the drive from the beginning all the way to the end, and stores it. And we store ours in what's called an EO1 format, expert witness format. It allows for some compression and storage, and then it also does some checking of the drive along the way. And then when it's done, it does a validation of the drive to make sure that everything matches up. And then we work from that EO1, which is considered to be one of the industry standards.
And then as far as actually viewing or looking at these hard drives, when you're looking at it, does it look like what we all think of when we look at a computer, where we see the icons, we click on the icons? Is that how you work through it, or what do you see?
It does not. The next step, there's a step that has to take place after the actual imaging. Well, there's a couple of versions. We could take the EO1, the image of the hard drive, place it in a piece of software, and look through the file structure without having to actually process it per se. And sometimes you can get some data that way. But what we do is, or what I do, is put it into a piece of software that actually will then process that image. And what I mean by processing is it essentially goes through and identifies the contents and then indexes the entire drive. So then it allows the analyst or the examiner then to make the contents more searchable. The software now has become more robust, and it can categorize these different artifacts or different elements within the file system of the hard drive, and it puts them into categories, which makes it easier for viewing for the analyst or the examiner. Did that answer the question?
It does. And we're going to build on some of these sort of concepts. But so when you're provided a computer, you copy essentially by imaging the hard drive, then you can take that and you can start to look at it with some assistance from some sort of software.
Correct.
Is it at that point where you can now start to look on that hard drive to see what's actually on there? Meaning, can you just dig through it and look to see what's on there, or can you put in specific search terms to see if something's on there? Is that where you're at in the process?
At this point, we would be at that point in the process, yes.
Okay. So once you get to that point where you're able to start looking at what's actually on this hard drive, are you working with your detectives that brought you the case, brought you the computer, to determine what it is that you should be searching for?
Absolutely. So at that point, it's really driven by the investigative process. So we work at the direction of the investigative unit or the detective and or officer that's working the case.
Okay.
They know the specifics of what they're looking for and what they need assistance with.
And in this particular case, I'm going to talk to you about 2 laptops. Were 2 laptops recovered from, at least your understanding, recovered from the Brophy's residence? Were those provided to you?
They were?
Okay. Was it your understanding that one came from near a bed in the bedroom and the other one came from a box in the closet?
Yes.
And when we're going through this, I'm going to make sure that we don't kind of mix those up. So just to kind of clarify from up front, under your analysis, the one near the bed, did that appear to be newer or older than the one from the closet?
It appeared to be newer.
And during your analysis, did you really find anything on that newer computer found near the bed?
That was relative to what the investigators were looking for?
Yes.
I did not.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sure there was other stuff on there, but relative to the investigation, was there really much on that newer computer next to the bed?
There was not.
Okay. Now, compare that to the one that you found that was found in the closet and given to you. Did that have the majority of the relevant material on it?
It did.
And you determined that to be an older computer?
I did.
Okay. And just how do you determine whether a computer is newer than or older than the other one?
Well, you can, the technology on the one that we're calling that was located on the bed or near the bed was newer technology. It had a much newer type hard drive than the one that was located in the closet. You could also go back and look at just chronologically the file system date and times.
I see. And then what about ownership or usership of these laptops? Is there a way that you can look into it to kind of try to identify who might own this computer or who might use the computer?
There is.
Okay, could you kind of describe that, please?
So when you set up, we should acknowledge too that these computers are the Windows operating system. So we're not talking about a Linux or an Apple Macintosh computer. We're talking about a Windows computer. When you set it up, you can set it up with a unique identifier. Most people will use either like a nickname or their name. And when you do that, every user that you attach gets its own unique identifier, like your own serial number, if you will. In this case, it's called a security identifier, or a SID.
Okay. And were you able to do that analysis on these 2 computers?
I was.
And were you able to come up with some ideas about who the owner was and who the maybe users or main user was?
I was.
And what did you come up with?
I came up with there was a lot of what, if may I refer to my report?
Yes, please.
There were the standard user accounts that you get when you establish that are set up by default, which are like the admin user accounts. In this case, there's the default. So if we're talking about the one that was on the bed, we're referring to as the HP Envy. which is the newer computer, that had user accounts for the default user, a user for Nancy, administrator, the guest account, and then the default account.
Was there any account associated with that computer under the name Dan?
There was not.
Anything other than Nancy?
Not that was other than the ones I mentioned.
Right, the admin or the.
Correct, no.
Okay. Now turning to the one in the closet, the computer in the closet, you did the same thing. What were you able to come up with?
Yeah, and that one we refer to as the HP laptop. Default user as well. Another user accounts that was Nancy. This was all lowercase. The one on the bed was the user Nancy, just had a capital N, so it's very similar. And then we had the administrator, guest, and the default account.
In any account associated with the name Dan?
None.
And we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go through, but just as an aside, in your analysis of both these computers, but primarily the one that's found in the closet, was there much, or if anything, to indicate that anyone other than Nancy was using this computer?
Not to my knowledge.
So before I get into some of the specific searches and artifacts that you've located, can you kind of give a brief overview to the jury of when we're talking about artifacts on a computer, what you're looking at, what you're finding on the computer, what is it that you're actually talking about? Are we talking about these are actual searches or these are actual visits to websites? Can you kind of give us an overview of that before we get into some of this stuff?
Sure. So when we refer to artifacts, we're talking about the elements that are left behind when the user interacts with their computer. Those elements are there they're there for you, the user, to make your user experience more pleasurable, to speed up the process and just make it more seamless. And those artifacts can be like, for example, when you launch an application. So if you launch, say, Chrome, for example, a prefetch file is going to be instantiated when you launch Chrome, with the idea that the next time that you launch it, it's a little bit faster. That prefetch file that's left behind is an artifact of execution that shows that that particular application actually ran. Same thing like if you were to open a Word document or a PDF document or an image file, there's a link file that's associated to that for the same purpose, to make viewing it the next time that much quicker, and therefore an artifact is left behind, which is a link file. When we get into things like web browsers, like Chrome, for example, or Firefox or Internet Explorer, there are artifacts that are left behind as the user navigates through the web browser. Again, those are designed to help make the experience more seamless or quicker.
And so as we go through these, and we're using the terms like artifact or searches, I'll just have you kind of clarify what it is that you're seeing and what kind of activity that means the user's actually doing.
Sure.
Okay. So I want to go to, and again, we're talking about only the computer that was located in the closet that you analyzed. Were you given a variety of search terms by investigator, Detective Merrill and Detective Posey, in order to focus your search?
I was.
Okay. And do you have a list of those search terms in front of you, or could you just kind of generically describe what kind of search terms you were using?
They're listed in my report, so I have them in front of me.
Sure. If you could go ahead and tell the jury what search terms you were using when you're looking through this computer.
So actually, prior to doing any sort of analysis, we're able to do some predefined search terms during the processing, which helps with it. And so during the processing, so when the software is actually going through the computer image and doing the indexing, we're able to create a word list of 5 search terms, I believe it's 5, which made up Glock, both in lowercase and uppercase G, the word gun, the word handgun, and the word murder. And so as it processed the case, it went through and then searched and then indexed those particular searches.
Okay.
Or those query strings, or those words, if you will.
And you used those 5 keywords: Glock, lowercase, Glock, uppercase, handgun, gun, and murder. Use those 5 keywords in searching this HP laptop computer.
During the initial processing, yes, sir.
Initial processing. And now, I know we're going to talk about 2 different programs here. Could you kind of explain what programs you're using and why you use more than one program.
Sure. So the initial program that I processed it with is from a company called Magnet Forensics, and the software is called Axiom. The second piece of software I use is from Basis Technology, and it's called Autopsy Forensics. That's for the processing and analysis portion. The imaging of the hard drive was done with a piece of software from X-Ways called X-Ways Forensic Imager.
So I just want to be clear in case we hear these terms, specifically Axiom or Magnet. And what was the other one, I'm sorry?
Autopsy.
Autopsy. That we're talking about the software that you used in order to verify that these artifacts are actually on the computer.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what's the purpose of using more than one?
You can validate your findings. So it allows me to, well, there's a couple reasons actually, but the primary reason is it allows us to validate our findings. So if we find something on the computer or the image on the hard drive, we'll just say the computer, that's relevant or relative to the case, then I can go and search for that same artifact in another piece of software and see if I can validate the results.
Okay. So I want to go to November of 2017. And did you find a responsive artifact in November 2017, specifically November 27th, 2017?
I did.
And what was that?
It was a reference to the URL Ghost Guns or the web address ghostguns.com. And that was found in the Internet Explorer Edge browser artifact in the main history artifact, which is associated to the native Windows web browser.
Okay. And I want to, actually, we're going to put up what's marked as States Exhibit 82 as we go through these. It'll show up on your screen. There you go. It's a little. I'm going to see if we can zoom in a little bit. It's a little hard to. Actually, maybe just that should work. Maybe get rid of
It
this
works
side.
for me.
There we go. That should work. Okay, so I'm referring to November 27, 2017. You said that you found this artifact. Now, does this artifact show that a visit to that site was done, or was this a search?
It shows that at some point the user visited that site.
Okay, and that's around 9:40 Pacific Standard Time.
Correct.
And cutting to the next line there, December of 2017, December 12th. Did you find another artifact associated with Ghost Guns as well?
I did.
And same thing, or?
Same thing. It's from the same main history artifact in the same browser artifact, which is again the Edge or Internet Explorer.
And again, is this just showing that at some point the user actually visited that URL, that
Yes.
website?
That's my understanding, yes.
And then on December 24th, that looks a little bit different than what you've been talking about. Could you describe what you were seeing there?
Yeah, so this is actually an artifact that comes from the WebKit browser web history. The WebKit browser, so the WebKit is, oh boy, it's the underlying infrastructure of well, Chrome is one of the main browsers that uses it, but think of it as like the framework with which the Chrome browser is built upon.
Okay.
And so it has its own web browser web history artifact that's left behind or that is relevant.
Okay, and so based on this return that you're seeing, what is it telling you that the user was doing at that time?
It looks like that there was an attempt to log into Ghost Guns,
Okay, like log into an account?
just to possibly.
And then that's at 8:04 p.m. At 8:08, so 4 minutes later or so, what are you seeing there?
I see from the same artifact, the WebKit browser. I see reference to an account
So as
under the same website, Ghost Guns.
and it says was visited. Does that, in your analysis, does that mean that somebody was visiting the My Account portion of the Ghost Guns website?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then we're looking at about 2 minutes later. Can we scroll down just a little bit? Thank you. What are you seeing there?
I see Similar, same again. We're still inside the WebKit browser history artifact. We're again dealing with the same domain, ghostguns.com, and this time we're seeing a URL of order-ghostguns.
And then about 1 minute and 9 seconds later, what are you seeing there?
The 8.11.13, is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. Essentially that something that, again, another URL, but this time it's still under the order category, and this is for order ghost guns.
That's at 8:11 p.m.
That is correct.
And is that the last time you see a interaction with the website ghostguns.com on the 24th?
I believe so.
So I want to skip ahead then to January. And could you describe what you were seeing on the user's activity on January 29th of 2018?
Yeah, so here we're correlating a couple of these are artifacts that are going to come from the Chrome web browser. And so here we're seeing Chrome web history, Chrome web visits, and then again the WebKit web browser history, which is what Chrome is built upon. And here we're seeing what looks like to be a Google search for kickback with a Glock.
So this isn't necessarily visiting a specific site. This is just doing a Google search for that phrase, kickback with Glock.
That is my understanding, yes.
That was at 6:59 and 44 seconds. Then we have 6:59 and 53 seconds. What were you saying there?
Again, we're still inside what appears to be, these artifacts do come from the Chrome application. So we have Chrome web history, the Chrome web visits, and again, we have the same WebKit browser artifacts. And then here we see a search string, or what looks to be a search string for, does a Glock pistol have a big kickback?
Then what about on January 31st? What did you see there?
Here we're dealing with a couple different, or at least a new artifact is being introduced. This is a Chrome shortcuts, and then we have Chrome web visits, which we've discussed already, and this is to the URL Ghost Guns, and so the Chrome shortcuts artifact is the artifact that you get when you start to type into the Omnibar or the Omnibox as they refer to it, and then it'll do it like an autocomplete. And
Like
so,
in the search bar, like on Google, you're typing in.
or there's there's two different spots on Google you can search, right? So you can actually search in that Omnibox across the top screen,
Okay.
or you can search sort of in the middle of the page in the search parameter. And when you start to do the autofill, it will recognize if you've been there before.
Okay. So to you, did this appear that somebody was attempting to type in ghost guns and it autofilled that? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, the transition is typed. So because we're talking about the 1/31/2018 at
Yes.
5:25:45.
Yes.
Yeah, so that transition is a transition typed, meaning that's typed user input.
Okay. So somebody's actually typing that into the computer.
And that's where you would get a Google Chrome shortcut artifact from as well.
Okay.
And that's why we're seeing it here and we didn't see it in the others.
Okay. So we see this search, and then is there there's a visit also to ghostguns.com from that?
It appears that there's, just below it appears there's a visit to a Ghost Guns Glock 19 YouTube.
Specifically, though, in the January 31st, 5:25 p.m. one,
Yes,
looks like it says the user, Nancy, visited the URL ghostguns.com.
yes.
Okay. So not only did someone type into the search bar ghost guns or something along those lines, but the person actually visited this site.
Yeah, so we get that. So we get two things that bring some of these artifacts together. So we have the Chrome shortcuts and then the transition type of typed, showing that the user would have typed that in. And then we have a Chrome web visit artifact showing that the user would have gone to that site.
Okay. And then it looks like 4 minutes later, about same night, same day, what are you seeing there? And is that a search or is that something else?
This is a web history artifact, meaning that the user would have gone to this YouTube site,
Okay.
which is Ghost Guns Glock 19.
And specifically on that site, Ghost Guns Glock 19, meaning videos on YouTube regarding that search?
That's
that-
my understanding, yes.
Is that what you're seeing, though, a search and then a visit to YouTube?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go to February 1st. If we could scroll down. Okay. That's okay. Okay, so on February 1st, at about 10:12 p.m., what were you seeing there?
Again, more what seems to be Chrome browser activity due to the shortcuts artifact, the web history Chrome or web history artifact, and the Chrome visit artifact, and then the WebKit browser artifact. Visited a particular URL, which is gun shops in Portland, and it appears that it was done via a Google search. We're back.
Okay. Okay, so this looks like a Google search for gun shops in Portland, essentially.
Correct.
Okay. And then fast forward a couple of weeks there to February 15th, about 10:50 a.m. What are we looking at there?
Without repeating the same artifacts over and over again, we're dealing with the same Chrome artifacts. In this case, shortcuts, web history, and web visits, as well as the WebKit browser. What looks to appear a search for how much does a Glock 17 cost?
A Google search for how much does a Glock 17 cost?
That is correct.
Then it looks like maybe just 20 seconds later, what are we seeing there?
We see reference to Glock 17 for sale on gunbroker.com.
And did the user actually visit gunbroker.com?
Well, there's a Chrome web visit artifact which is left behind, which means that the user more than likely visited that site. Yes.
Okay. And I guess just from your perspective and the timeline here, does that make sense to you that somebody's searching for how much does a Glock 17 cost, and then 20 seconds later they're on a website called Gunbroker?
Yes.
Okay. And then about 9 minutes later, so at 10:59 on February 15th, what are you seeing there?
We're seeing a search string for when do you have to register for a gun in Oregon, which appears to be a Google search again, which this search string and artifact was recovered from Chrome shortcuts, Chrome web browser history, and Chrome web visit history, as well as the WebKit.
Then just about 5 minutes or so after that, on February 15th, what are you seeing?
Another Google search term for gun safety classes, again coming from Google Chrome artifacts in reference to what appears to be a Google search.
And about less than a minute later, it looks like, do we see a web visit there?
We do. That's to Blackstone Gun Safety, and the artifacts there that we get that from again are from or blackstonegunsafety.com. I guess I should clean that up a little bit. Is from the Chrome shortcuts, Chrome web history, Chrome web visits, and the web browser kit. And if memory serves me right, that was like moving from a link. So like when you search for something and then you click the link, it would take
Kind
you
of like
to
what
the
you
site.
talked about before. She's doing a search for, say, gun safety classes, and then now she's finding herself on a website, Blackstone Gun Safety or whatever. That would make sense from the search that she just had conducted.
Right, you would have to go there though. It wouldn't just auto-populate. You would have to like in this particular case, I believe it was done via a clicked link versus like typing in direct. Like if you were to type it in and just directly go there, this one you click the link and you would go to that link.
In the Google search.
Correct.
Okay, I think I understand. Okay, so that's at 11:04:59. Then a little over about 2.5 minutes later, what are we looking at there?
We're looking at what appears to be another Google search, this time for Portland Expo Gun Show 2018. And again, this is part of the Chrome browser artifacts that we've mentioned before.
And then 2 days later, at about 8:30 in the morning on the 17th, February 17th, is it sort of that same search, that Portland Expo Gun Show 2018?
It is.
Okay. Did you actually visit a website that time? Can you tell?
Well, according to with Chrome Web History and Chrome Web Visits, that indicate that the user would have visited a site.
Okay. Okay.
That site, though, could be the search for the site. Whether or not she actually went to the expo site, that I don't know.
Right. So, meaning you're Googling Portland Expo Gun Show, that could be what we're saying up here, that she actually Googled it. But
Correct.
from there, you can't necessarily say where she went.
Correct.
Okay. So I'm going to go to February 19th, so just 2 days later. And again, we see that it says typed at the end there. What is being typed?
The string for ghost guns is being typed. We see a Chrome shortcuts, which again means that it on this one, I think it was just the word ghost was actually typed and then autofilled after that one.
Okay. And then even though it was autofilled, you still show that there was a visit to the website ghostguns.com.
Correct.
About 9 minutes after that, or I'm sorry, about 11 minutes after that, what are we seeing there?
We're seeing a Google search, this time for a Glock 17 slide for sale.
And a little over a minute later, what are you seeing?
Seeing a reference to a Glock Model 17 Gen 4 complete slide and barrel, 9mm upper, with a reference to eBay. And there's a URL, meaning a web address to the domain of ebay.com.
Meaning a visit to eBay with that search was done.
Yes. So, yes.
And then a couple minutes after that, what are you seeing there?
We see a Chrome, what's called fave icon associated with the user Nancy was last updated in the reference to this URL. Which again, those are, the fave icon is when you navigate to certain websites, sometimes they'll put the little icon that's associated with different websites up into the search bar. And so those are recorded and kept in their own section.
And you've already talked about that it shows a visit to eBay. Is this just a further reference to show that the user is actually likely on eBay?
That's my understanding, yes.
And then I'm going to take you just a couple minutes after that. So February 19th, 2018 at about 12:22 p.m. I see the word autofill there again. Can you tell us what it looks like is being typed there?
Glock 17 slide.
So straight into Google or straight into Chrome, somebody's typing in Glock 17 slide.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Now it says an account value of 5 at the end. What does that mean?
It'll give a count value, so I would have to look it up, and it's in their reference chart, but my understanding is that it will iterate the number of times that a particular item has been typed into the search bar.
Okay. So to you, and I know this maybe needs for some clarification, does it look like Glock 17 slide was typed into this same browser at some point upwards of 5 times?
That's my understanding. Okay. Again, I'd have to cross-reference that with the documentation, okay. I guess.
And we can clarify that if that's different. Okay, so that's at 12:22 p.m. And now we're going to skip ahead about 4.5 hours to 5 p.m. on the same day, February 19th. It sort of looks like the one before it, but now it says Glock 19 slide.
Correct.
Is the same thing happening? Somebody's typing in Glock 19 slide?
That's my understanding, yes.
This one says a count value of 1. So under the same theory, I know subject to maybe some clarification, it looks like somebody only typed that in one time?
Correct.
So we're going to jump then to the next day, February 20th, 2018. What are you seeing there?
I'm seeing, again, more Chrome web browser artifacts with a search string. It looks like how to sell a gun in Oregon.
Besides that one search of how to sell a gun in Oregon, was there really any other searches in your time with these computers that looked like there was any research done on how to actually sell a gun in Oregon?
None that I'm aware of.
So on February 20th, just a few minutes after that search of how to sell a gun in Oregon, so now at 3:17 p.m., I see eBay again there. Is this another visit to eBay?
Yes, this again comes from a Chrome web visit artifact. So yes, and it shows that again that it's the domain of ebay.com.
Okay. And in quotes there towards the end, it says Glock Model 17 Gen 4, complete slide and barrel, 9mm upper, G4 Austria with barrel, new, and R.
Bless you.
Is that a search term, or is that just how you get to that place in eBay? I don't know if I'm asking the right question.
I don't know if that is in fact a search term or not. My interpretation of it would be that would be the title of whatever was in that web history.
Okay. So it appears that the user visited eBay and visited some sort of page on eBay with that sort of parameter.
Well, you can see if you go back up to the URL portion,
Yes.
you can actually see the URL. If you were to enter that HTTPS and then the long string that followed all the way to the end, it would take you to that page.
Okay. And you're showing the user actually visited that page.
Yes.
So it's at 3:17 and 10 seconds. Now at 3:17 and 41 seconds, same day, February 20th. What are you seeing in regards to activity on eBay?
I'm seeing a sign in or register reference.
So it appears that somebody visited a part of eBay where you have the ability to sign in or register.
Yes, that's how I interpret it, yes.
Just make sure we got our timeline here. So that was at 3:17 and 41 seconds. Then at 3:18 p.m. Same day. Also looks like eBay, but now we see a real long string of something. Can you tell us what that is and what the conclusion was there?
Well, there's actually quite a bit going on in there. This is just going to be the remnants of this particular artifact as they were stored within the SQLite database. But if you scroll down a little bit, so essentially it's the URL parameters, and then when you get down to the bottom, you're going to see that it's again a sign in or register eBay, and then like it looks like maybe an error message.
Okay, so even though there's a lot going on up there, that's still really just a really long way of showing a website?
Well, there's stuff in reference to, there's to the sign into eBay, and then there's a bunch of references to Glock Model 17 Gen 4. So whether or not, I couldn't tell you what that actually is signing in for. I can just tell you what it references.
Okay. And then I'm going to take you to the next one. This one's also very long. This is now at 3:19 p.m. Kind of the same thing, a lot of data in there, but what is the ultimate conclusion in that one?
This here looks like it's asking to reset your password for what I believe to be eBay. And then again, it looks like it's in reference to an eBay item for a Glock Model 17. And I believe in the one above it, there was actually a user ID associated with it.
Let's go back to that one if we can.
Right there. If you stop there, if you see halfway down the screen towards the end, you'll see user ID, and then you'll see a Nancy Brophy.
Maybe there's a pointer in front of you. If you could kind of point us to where you're talking. Oh, is the hand kind of next?
The hand is next to it.
Okay, so the user ID for eBay under this string here, it's showing a user of Nancy Brophy.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So I want to go further on the 20th. Very brief on this one. It's at 3:19 and 26 seconds p.m. It looks like this one is titled at the end of "Verify it's you."
Correct.
Still on eBay though?
I believe so. Yes, it appears to still be on eBay.
Okay. So does that conclude the activity for eBay on the 20th, as far as you can remember?
As far as I can remember, yes.
Okay. So jumping to the next day, the next morning, 21st at 10:12 a.m. Looks like we're back on eBay?
It looks like we're back on eBay, yes.
Okay. And on this one, can you tell if there's a specific seller listed? And direct your attention to the third line down, almost all the way to the right.
Yes, it looks like something referencing the Coraline Colt Company.
Caroline?
Or Caroline, sorry.
Okay. Okay, and then that's on the 21st. So now jumping to the 23rd, what are we looking at there?
Here again, we're back. The one above was in the Internet Explorer or Edge artifact, the one that we're on now. We're back into the Chrome artifacts, and this is a Chrome shortcuts artifact. So again, this would be a search term, a Google search for what appears to be a Glock slide 17 Gen 4.
Okay. And then later that same evening at 8 p.m., do we find ourselves back on eBay again?
We do.
Okay. And again, it's kind of the same stuff, Glock 17, Gen 4, complete slide and barrel,
That's correct.
same stuff, okay. Then go to the next one there, we'll have to scroll down. On February 23rd, just a couple of minutes later. Now, are we back in the Edge Internet Explorer browser?
That's where this artifact comes from, yes.
Okay. So can you help me, or help the jury understand too, are we sort of bouncing back and forth between using Chrome and Internet Explorer? Or?
That would be my interpretation, yes.
Okay, so at some points Chrome is being used, the web browser, and then some points Internet Explorer is being used.
Yes.
But they're kind of searching the same type of things.
It appears so.
Okay. The specific one I want to draw your attention to here is the February 23rd at 8:03 p.m. Now it looks like we're back in Internet Explorer Edge. What are we looking at on that one?
We're seeing a reference to an eBay transaction, I believe. It looks like the is pay.ebay.com. So it references what looks like to be either like some sort of payment or transaction.
So Officer Sparling, I think we're going to stop there as far as that state's exhibit goes for now. We'll cover the rest tomorrow. I'm just going to look at my notes here to make sure I don't have any other questions. Yeah, I think that's all the questions I have for now. Thank you.
Your Honor, I think he'll reserve our cross for tomorrow. He's coming back tomorrow.
Come back, I'm not sure I'm understanding. Is this witness expected to testify tomorrow? Okay, all
He
right.
just indicated that, yes, he's
Okay,
not finished
all right.
with his testimony.
Okay, so then can the witness speak, well, I guess the witness isn't excused but can step down for today. All right, thank you. And then I'll ask the parties, I was planning on taking our afternoon break at 3:30, but maybe this is a good point to do it. How lengthy is the next witness, more or less?
I think our next witness is relatively short, but
Okay.
he may also be our last witness of the day.
Oh.
We actually kind of making some adjustments,
Okay.
and so if we want to take a break, or we can just press on.
When you say short, like, roughly how long do you think?
Always hard to anticipate cross, but I think from our side, probably about 15 minutes.
Okay, all right, well, why don't we just call the witness and, well, let me check with the jurors. Does anyone need to have a comfort break? Doesn't look like it. All right, let's go ahead then.
Okay, the state will call Patrick Cowan.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Cowan, we'll have you step into the witness box, but just stay standing for a moment and my clerk will give you a note.
Okay, I'll have you raise your right hand, please. Under the penalty of perjury, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay. And you can take off your mask.
Thank you.
And then because we're being recorded, I'll ask you to please state and spell your first and last name.
That's Patrick Cowan, Patrick Cowen.
And there is, Mr. Cowan, a pitcher of water there if you want it,
Okay, thank you.
but whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Cowan, where are you either currently employed or do you actually own your own company?
Yes, we
don't
own.
you? Okay, what is your company?
Caroline Colt Company
Caroline Colt Company. Where's that based out of?
in Texas.
And do you have a, is it just an online store or is it also a brick and mortar store?
It's a brick and mortar store and we do sell online.
And what is the nature of your business, Caroline Colt Company?
We're a firearm store, accessories and ammo, anything firearm related.
Firearm accessories, all that?
Everything, yes, sir.
Okay. And do you just have one brick and mortar location?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you said you also sell online.
Yes, we do.
Is it through your own website or do you sell on other websites?
On auction platforms as eBay and some others.
Okay. And in the store, I suppose you sell complete firearms, is that right?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Are you also selling complete firearms online?
We do on the Gunbroker website.
Is that gunbroker.com?
Yes, gunbroker.com.
Okay. You actually sell completed firearms?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is that, when you're selling completed firearms, does that have to go to somebody with a particular permit?
Absolutely, yes. We're federally licensed with ATF, and when you ship a firearm, it has to go to another federally licensed firearms individual.
Okay. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a store, like an individual like myself could go through the process and obtain a federal firearms license?
Sure, sure.
And then if I had something like that, I would be able to buy a gun from you online. You'd be able to ship that to me.
Right. To where your premise location is on your license.
Okay. However, if I'm just an average citizen, I can't get on your website or gunbroker.com.
You can go on gunbroker.com and purchase a firearm, but we have to send it to a licensed individual for you to pick up.
Okay. So you'd have to send it to somebody else who either has this
Right.
federal firearms license or to say a local gun shop.
Right, right.
Is that primarily how that's done?
That's exactly how it's done for a licensed individual, yes.
Okay. So
A complete firearm has to go from one dealer to another dealer
gotcha.
with
So
license.
I want to buy a gun on gunbroker.com. I can do that, but it's got to go to a local gun shop for me
Yes,
to
sir.
complete that purchase.
Right.
Now, is that true for firearm parts?
No.
Specifically, slide and barrels to handguns.
No regulations on size or barrels.
Okay, so you can just put them on eBay. I can go on there and buy them.
Yes, sir.
Is there any verification that goes into that? Meaning, do you verify my age, anything like that?
You've got to have a verified account with, say, eBay or PayPal to purchase on there. There's no age requirements for a slide or barrel, but
And so, when you say verified, do you mean verified by eBay or
yeah,
PayPal?
eBay verifies their users, and then at that time, you would have to have a PayPal account to complete the purchase on eBay,
Okay.
and they verify their users as well.
By the person being verified, that's essentially satisfies what you need on your
Right.
end. To
It makes it a safe a selling platform for both sellers and buyers.
And that's not necessarily because of the laws, right? That's so that in case you need your money back or
Right,
there's a
right.
dispute or something.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And you said you owned Caroline Coal Company, but when did you start Caroline Coal Company?
Caroline Coal Company started in 2016.
Okay. And still in operation?
Yes, sir.
Back in 2018, was Caroline Coal Company engaged in listing firearm parts specifically on eBay?
Yes, sir.
Is that a practice you've since discontinued?
We no longer use eBay. Their fees were getting a little too high.
So, and I think you said this, but you're pretty much on Gunbroker.
Yeah, pretty much everything online is through Gunbroker.
I see.
That's what we do now.
But back in 2018 was selling gun parts on eBay.
Parts and accessories on eBay.
Was that a pretty big part of the business back then?
Yeah, it was. We were one of the prominent sellers on eBay.
And have you previously provided documentation to detectives in this case?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you what's marked as States Exhibit 66.
Okay.
I'm going to ask if you recognize this. It'll show up on that screen in front of you in just a
Yes, sir.
moment. first of all, do you know what we're looking at here?
Yes, sir. That's our eBay listing.
Okay, that is one of your eBay listings?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. In reviewing the documents that you provided to detectives in this case, do you recognize this as the eBay listing that ultimately was won by Nancy Brophy?
Yes, sir.
And so this picture here, it looks like it depicts a sliding barrel. We've looked at one already here in court. Is that exactly what comes with this item?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
It's got the slide, the barrel, and the recoil spring and sights.
Okay. And it's a price of, it says, looks like $355. Was that pretty normal?
Yeah, that was normal at the time. A little lower than normal.
Okay.
I mean, it was a good buy.
And this is an auction.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So could have paid a little bit less, could have paid a little
Yeah,
bit.
it's kind of a roll of the dice. You can see there's 55 bids, so you know it was sought after gun parts.
So you said this one actually ran up 55 bids?
Yes, sir.
So Miss Brophy would have had to outbid, not necessarily 54 other people, because some of those bids might be
Yeah, half of
hers.
those bids could have been hers. It's just, you know, they go in increments. She could have put a $400 bid in there and it'd go up as other people would bid on it. Well, hey, they're outbid.
I see.
It's an auction platform.
But as you said, these are pretty popular items on.
Oh yeah, yes.
Did you sell quite a bit of sliding barrels back then?
Yeah, they were popular in 1819. You know, it's an upgradable part of the firearm, and so you know, there's lots of surplus parts.
Okay. And we can read on there, it says Glock model 17 Gen 4 complete sliding barrel 9mm.
Yes, sir.
Are you aware of, you know, you're just selling this one part, so
Right.
I guess are you assuming that the person who's purchasing it has the lower frame that they're going to be able to put this
Oh
gun
yes,
part on?
yes. I mean, for it to work, you definitely need a lower frame.
Sure, a complete lower
Right,
frame.
complete lower frame.
And so, in your opinion, how difficult is it to put this? Say I get this in the mail, I have my lower frame. How hard is it to put that sliding barrel onto my lower frame?
Extremely easy, just slides on. I mean, as if you're racking the gun, it just slides right on, clicks in place.
Okay. Nothing special needs to be done.
And then taking it off, there's a couple steps, but it's fairly easy to take off and on. Extremely easy.
Specifically, these types of guns, these Glock Model 17s, were they designed to be that way?
Oh yes, I mean that's why Glock built them that way, to be quick dismantling for cleaning purposes and such. I mean, makes it real easy to take apart and clean.
Okay.
I mean, you can clean your gun in seconds.
I'm going to show you what's marked as States Exhibit 80. And if we could zoom in just a little bit. Does this appear to be the receipt from that listing that you
Yes, sir.
provided, that you previously provided to?
Yeah,
detectives?
that's all our transaction details. That's provided by PayPal and eBay.
Okay. And it says shipped to Nancy Brophy and lists her address.
Yes.
And then it says confirmed.
Mhm.
So does that mean that this item was actually shipped to Nancy Brophy?
The confirmed is eBay confirming that that's a good address. That is
Gotcha.
her address, and it's safe to ship there.
And then in reviewing your records, do you show that you actually did ship this item?
Yes, we did ship this item.
Okay. It says shipping status up there on the top, shipped. Is that something that you would have been completed?
Yeah, as soon as you populate the shipping label through eBay, it would have confirmed everything, close it out, provided the tracking number.
Okay. And it looks like, I know you said you provided this to detectives, so
Yes.
essentially you provided them the tracking number as well.
Absolutely.
Do you recall getting any sort of confirmation of any sort that this item was actually delivered?
We could have tracked it by that number at the time, but of course, when you don't get the item back or anything, you assume it's been picked up and all's good.
Yeah, and you're sort of leading into my next question, which
Yeah.
is, did you get this item returned?
No, we didn't.
Okay. Do you have a return policy?
Well, eBay, I think at the time was a 30-day return policy. So if there was any reason why it needed to be returned, it would have been returned within the 30 days. That would be our policy.
Okay, so if I got this sliding barrel and I look at it, manipulate it, play with it, check it out for 30 days, I could send it back.
Oh yeah, yeah. And we usually work with people if they, if it's longer than that. I mean,
As long as they didn't damage it, I suppose.
right. As long as we resell it.
But nonetheless, I got 30 days
Yeah.
to have
Yes,
that
sir.
in my hands.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this point, I'd move to admit States Exhibit 66 and 80 if they're already not pre-admitted.
No objection.
Be admitted. I think 66 was already, but
I thought so.
February 23rd would have been the sell date with the time she won the auction or someone won the auction.
Okay, great. And is this just sent through the regular mail?
Yes, that would have been U.S. Postal Service. It was shipped out on the 26th.
And as far as you're aware, there wasn't any problems with the shipping? You weren't notified that it wasn't delivered or anything like that?
No, we would have been notified if the customer didn't get their product.
Okay. I know sorry to circle back on this, but I know we were talking a little bit about sort of licensing that's required when you purchase a firearm or
Yes, sir.
especially through online. But what about a background check? Is there any sort of background check that is required when I purchase a slide and barrel on eBay?
No background check on this, no, sir. That's non-regulated.
And what is the portion of the firearm that is regulated?
The frame.
So if you want to sell a completed frame of these handguns that we've been talking about,
Right.
that's what you'd
They
have to have somebody have a background check?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I don't believe I have any other questions for you. Thank you, Mr. Connell.
Yes, sir.
all right. Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Maxfield, one of the lawyers representing Ms. Brophy. I wonder if we can go back to Exhibit 66 for a second. I think your testimony was that that was the actual slide that was sold and delivered. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And it states that it's a Glock Model 17. Is it an actual Glock slide and barrel?
Yes, it is.
And back in 2018, did Glock sell their slide and barrel separately?
No, they did not.
So how did it come to be that you were able to sell separately the slide and barrel? Did you have to abandon the frame, or what did you do?
Well, it's an upgradable part. There's a number of reasons why someone would have a Glock slide and barrel. A majority of times it's an upgrade. I mean, there's a company called Zev that back in 18 was extremely popular. It's kind of like souping up a vehicle. Pull your plain Jane slide off and put this upgraded slide. It has better sights, a sight mounting platform, and it's a nice upgrade.
And so is this an upgradable part from what somebody would get if they just bought a Glock?
Could they get just this
17?
part, or?
No, is this slide that you sold an upgraded part?
It's not an upgraded part, but we sell a lot of these surplus parts. I mean, even law enforcement, they wear out their guns. These, a barrel gets burned out. They're only worth so many rounds before you have to upgrade. It's a lot cheaper buying it this way than buying a whole nother gun when your frame is still good. That's why a lot of people do buy these.
Okay. And you sold this to a woman who gave her name as Nancy Brophy.
Right.
And she provided you an address that was verified.
Right.
And she
Yes.
used, I'm assuming, a traceable credit card to pay what you charged.
A PayPal account, so it would have been linked to the PayPal account.
And this Glock slide that you sold does have a serial number, does it not?
Yes.
And the serial number on the slide would match the serial number on the barrel?
It should, yes.
Okay. Now you talked about swapping a slide. And I'm going to sound stupid now because I tried to do this, but you're supposed to pull down two little tabbies on the side of it.
It's got a locking levers on both sides. It's
and they're kind of itty bitty.
Not really. I mean, they're made to be able to grab them.
Okay. Is there a special way that you need to grab it so that you can pull those down?
I mean, just pull them straight down. It's it's a two-handed operation to get the slide off. It's extremely, to get the slide off, you have two hands. One, you just take a little pressure off the slide and pull those levers down and release. And then the trigger, you pull the trigger and the slide just slides right off. To put the slide back on, you just hold the frame, hold the slide, and go.
Okay, but to get it off, that was the part that, to get it off, you push down on the slide? Is that what you said?
No, you just take a little pressure off the slide. You cup the back of it and just kind of pull it back just a hair, pull the slides and release, and then you just pull it. That releases the tension on the slide. It's really simple.
And what happens if I do that and I just kind of pull those little levers down and then let go of them again? What happens to the slide? Is it loose?
If you pull the trigger after the fact, after you do the two notches, the slide will just slide right off. That's how Glock designed it.
You pull the trigger and then it slides off.
Right. After you release those two tabs.
Okay. And is there any difference at all in how easy that is between a new gun and an old gun?
No.
The same?
Same process.
But it's those same little.
There's an indentation on the frame that little lever goes in, so that you have plenty of room for your fingers. If that's what you're saying. I mean, it's.
I'm gonna try it again, but okay. But you release some pressure and then you pull those down.
Yeah.
And you said you used the United States Postal Service to deliver this firearm.
Yes.
And you were able to use the United States Postal Service as a delivery company because this was a legal sale?
Yes. All our sales are legal.
And you tracked the package, but I'm wondering whether you required a signature at the time of delivery.
There was delivery confirmation, but no signature required.
Okay. And so confirmation just means the Postal
Postman
Service
delivered it
says
to
we
the
delivered
address.
it. And would they need to deliver it to an adult?
No. They could just put it in the mailbox.
Really? Okay. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Cowan,
Yes, sir.
there's discussion of this serial number. That serial number is not registered anywhere, is that correct?
The frame that this slide probably originally came on is registered, yes.
The frame?
Right.
Not the slide itself?
Right.
And so.
Well, it's really no registration, but it's traceable. Okay. To the original
frame.
room. Right.
Yeah. So, but the slide itself, when
Slide
it's
is-
removed and disconnected from the.
Yeah,
frame,
whoever bought this gun originally probably upgraded the slide and barrel, and that's where we came. We always buy surplus parts. You know, if anybody comes in and says, hey, I've got these extra parts from my upgrade, would you like to purchase them, and so forth. So we do get lots of parts like this, but the original frame to this slide and barrel would have been legally purchased and paperwork done on.
Sure, and that's because that background check was done on that person, and they that gun was associated with that person in their background check. But once you separate it and it goes to you, and then it goes out to somebody else.
Pretty much irrelevant on the serial number on the slide once that happens.
Okay, there's no government organization that's reported to.
No.
So is it essentially not really traceable at that point?
Correct. There'd be no reason to trace a slide technically. You know,
Sure.
So it's not the firearm.
And I just want to make sure we understand the upgradability. You're saying that people would generally upgrade from this to something better.
Right. And that's how we come into possession of these, because they have surplus parts and they buy these upgrade kits, and that's how we get them.
Okay. So somebody has bought a better upgraded part. They don't need this anymore. They can sell it to you for less, and then you can turn around and sell it to somebody else for a replacement to theirs that maybe wore out.
Oh yeah, I mean, if there's lots of law enforcement guys out there that they shoot thousands of rounds a week at the range, and these barrels only last X amount of rounds. So hey, I can buy a new gun for $6.99, or I can have a good as new gun for $3.55. I mean, it's substantial savings for someone.
Okay. I don't believe I have any further questions.
All right, can Mr. Cowan be excused?
For the state, yes.
Objection.
Okay, you can be excused, thank you.
Thank you.
And if I heard right, Mr. Overstreet, that's gonna conclude for today, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, so we'll start up again tomorrow at 9. We will try to start at 9. So Jerry will be excused, but if I can have everyone else stay for just a moment. No, it can go.